All right, there we go. So as I was saying, we have Sergeant Kurt Keeper from the University Circle the Police Department joining us tonight. And then I am Cameron Roberts, UCI's Associate Director of Transportation, essentially do all work related to transportation advocacy throughout the University Circle District. Throughout the meeting tonight, we're going to be giving a brief presentation on crashes that have occurred in the district involving pedestrians, bicyclists, or other non-car users, essentially our road's most vulnerable users that have occurred this year in 2023. We'll also share some of the close call reports that we have received, and then share some progress updates on some projects we're working on to improve pedestrian safety in the neighborhood. Then at the end of the meeting, we like to open it up for questions and answers, discussion, essentially just have a chance to chat about pedestrian safety or any particular concerns that you might have. If you have any questions while we are presenting anything, feel free to use the chat box or simply just unmute yourself as well. Either is fine. Thank you all again for attending tonight. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we like to do when we are hosting these meetings is just reiterate the reasoning behind them. So these meetings started in 2020 with an initiative that we started called Project Yield. This is an initiative all focused on improving pedestrian safety in the district and was something that we started after there were a number of serious or even fatal pedestrian crashes that occurred in the district throughout late 2019 and early 2020. We had several that resulted in serious injury, and then very unfortunately 2 resulted in death as well. And so we really realized that we needed a response to really hone in and focus on pedestrian safety and do all that we could to prevent this type of thing from happening again. So with that, we established Project Yield. We do things like these quarterly meetings to check in with the community. We do a variety of data collection to see whether our efforts are making a difference. We do a lot of things to increase awareness throughout the district. You've probably seen some of our signage, whether it's related to the close calls or the speed limit reminders that we put up throughout the fall and winter. And then we also advocate on a regular basis to the city of Cleveland for infrastructure improvements based on trends that we are seeing as well as feedback that we're hearing from the community. And just to present or share our organization really quick, so we are University Circle, Inc. We are essentially the nonprofit behind the University Circle neighborhood. We are a place-based nonprofit, so we solely focus on initiatives within the University Circle District. Some of our functions in terms of what we do are listed here: transportation planning, like this meeting, community education, events like Wait Over Wednesday, public safety through the University Circle Police Department, and then just in general, advocacy for the neighborhood and being a convener for all of the different players and stakeholders throughout the district. The one thing I always like to share related to our advocacy work for transportation is that we are not always in the position that we would like to be in order to implement changes. We are the nonprofit for the district, but we don't have the authority to actually make changes to the roadway. But what we can do is listen to everybody and then take what we hear, take the data that we collect, and then advocate to the city of Cleveland to have those changes implemented. And we have a pretty good track record of making that happen through initiatives like this and partnerships and just having a good working relationship with a variety of institutions as well as the city. So the first thing that we always like to do with these meetings is just give an update on crashes that have occurred throughout the year. So to date in 2023, well, essentially looking at the period of January to the end of August of 2023, there have been 7 crashes that have occurred in the district involving either a pedestrian, bicyclist, or other type of non-car user. And you can see the locations for those plotted here. So we have seen 7 crashes, 5 involving pedestrians, 1 involving a wheelchair user, and 1 involving a bicyclist. Since the last pedestrian safety meeting that we held at the beginning of June, there has only been one additional crash, which is the location that I'm circling right here, close to the intersection of East 105th and MLK. That was an instance where according to the Cleveland Police Department crash report at least, this was an instance where a pedestrian entered the roadway unexpectedly, not at a crosswalk, and ended up colliding with a motorist. This is a rare instance where apparently the pedestrian actually admitted that they were the one at fault. Unfortunately, it did not lead to any injury occurring, but still something good for us to be aware of. Maybe that is telling that there's not a good crossing there. So good for us to know that that occurred and the reasons why. And then you can also just see the other ones that we covered in previous meetings, but quite a few along Euclid Avenue, one at the intersection of Cornell Road and Circle Drive. And then there was one down here at the intersection of East 105th and Carnegie. In addition to crashes, one thing that we always like to touch on is encouraging people to tell us when close calls occur. So on our website, universitycircle.org/project yield, we have this little red square down here at the bottom of my screen. It's a report a close call button. This takes you to a mapping application that is posted by the city of Cleveland, where you are able to drop a pin at a location and let us know if you experienced a close call yourself. Maybe you're trying to cross a crosswalk and the car didn't see you and almost hit you or didn't yield for you, or even if it didn't occur to you, but you witnessed it, you could also report that on behalf of the person that it happened for. And this data is actually very helpful for us. If you go back to that previous slide we were looking at for the crashes that occurred this year, we know that those occurred. We have that data because there are Cleveland Police Department reports that tell us about those. But there are, a lot of instances where an actual crash didn't occur and a police report didn't happen. And, we're not going to know that those happened unless someone reports that to us and makes us aware. So this is really a missing piece of the puzzle in terms of, having an understanding of pedestrian safety in the district. So, if you experience that or notice anything, certainly encourage you to let us know by going to the website. If you walk around the district, you've probably seen a bunch of our signs right here, the photo to the left as well. We placed these at some targeted locations where there have been known problems or people have given us requests for them, so that people that aren't aware of this tool can see this if they have an instance involving a close call and report them to us. So this is the same map as before, but I've added in all the close call reports that we have received for this year as well. Again, January through August. So to date, we have gotten 14 close call reports. 8 of them were for pedestrians and actually involved some form of close call situation. And then 6 were more general comments. So in that reporting tool, there's also an option to provide general comments for things like debris in the roadway or in a bike lane or a traffic signals down, stuff like that. And I guess one thing I will just say about that really quickly is certainly feel welcome to use the close call reporting tool to report those more general comments. But the other thing that I would like to encourage everyone to do is rely on the city's 311 reporting tool as well. If you're not familiar with 311, it's a call center that's available 24/7, where when you're within the city of Cleveland's boundaries, you simply dial 311 on your phone, and you can report to an operator a variety of issues that you notice. So again, maybe a tree's down, maybe a traffic signal's not working, maybe there's overgrown debris in a bike lane, all those things, or potholes. All of those things can be reported directly at 311, and then the operator will give it to the appropriate person at the city to take care of. I will say, how quickly they respond to those Service request is certainly on a case-by-case basis, depending on what the issue is. I will say from experience for potholes, I use 311 all the time throughout winter and spring to report potholes in the district. And they generally get out within about 2 weeks of me submitting my report to them. So for things like potholes, they are pretty responsive to that. So another thing I just want to touch on really quick is, in addition to just collecting this data, having an understanding of where problem areas may be or trends and so forth, another thing that we like to do is we actually go out to a lot of these locations and do site visits, look at the infrastructure, look at what signage is available, whether there are maybe lighting issues or objects in the way that could be obstructing motorists from seeing pedestrians, how long a crosswalk is, all of those things we look at in order to have a better understanding of, why did this crash occur or why did this close call happen? And, what type of improvements or enhancements could we think about doing in order to mitigate the chances of that occurring again? And so I just want to show one example of our efforts in looking at this. So this is the intersection of Euclid Avenue and East 115th Street. Just to give some context, this stretch right here of road is Euclid Avenue. We're on East 115th looking southbound. Just to the right of this photo would be Plum Market, if that is familiar to any of you. But this is an intersection where over the past 2 years, we have seen a number of crashes involving pedestrians being struck by motorists. And the most common situation that we have seen here are collisions that have occurred as a result of turning movements of motorists going from East 115th onto Euclid Avenue. So a good example I could give is this Amazon truck right here. Say they're heading southbound towards East 115th Street towards Euclid, and they want to make a right-hand turn onto Euclid. What we're seeing is that a lot of drivers aren't stopping directly at this advanced stop bar right here where they're supposed to on a red light. Rather, they're going fully into the crosswalk in order to start to make that right-hand turn and look to the left, make sure they're clear and go. What's happening in that instance is, because they're not stopping at this advanced stop bar, and because there is this traffic control box here, it's very easy to not see a pedestrian waiting right here at the corner. And so there's been a couple instances of pedestrians trying to cross and vehicles trying to make that right-hand turn, and just not having enough time to either see a pedestrian or stop for them when they walk out. So last year, when we initially started looking at this intersection, this advanced stop bar did not exist. That was something that we advocated for the city to install last summer, which seemed to help a bit, but we are still observing a lot of the same issues as before. So now we have been having initial conversations with the city about what could we do next in terms of preventing this type of situation from happening. And what the city has agreed to do is implement a no turn on red at this intersection for turns onto Euclid Avenue. So essentially, a vehicle waiting here at the intersection, wanting to turn right onto Euclid, would not legally be allowed to once the signage is in place until they get the green light. And so what that does is it, it prevents those cross situations of a motorist, being able to hit a pedestrian that's trying to cross at the time that they have a walk symbol. And then the other thing that we're doing, so that essentially addresses right-hand turns, but we've also noticed a couple of situations with left-hand turns as well. And so we are also working at the city to have this signage, left turn yield on green, added as well. Likely to be installed in sort of this area I'm circling right now. And this is just a reminder for people that are looking at that light, waiting for a green to, take one last look left before you start making a turn, make sure there's no pedestrians, just additional awareness reminding before they make that turn. Okay. So this is something that has not been fully implemented yet, but the city has agreed to it. We're just sort of waiting on some additional details in terms of time frame. but certainly hope that by sometime this fall, this will be implemented. And I see that we have a question from Rebecca. Feel free to either unmute and ask or use the chat as well. All right, maybe she stepped away, but we'll continue onward.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, go ahead.
I was just walking through this intersection a few times in the last couple of hours. Walk sign, one of the problems I think here is people become very impatient. That walk sign takes forever when you're standing there. And I think changing the light sequence is something that ought to be looked at. And I think it's not going to necessarily help when you have no turn on red. If the light changes to green and the walk sign does or doesn't go off at the same time, people are going to become impatient that I finally had to wait for the light to change, and they're still not necessarily going to see the pedestrian. So I think somebody really needs to look at how long those lights last.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So two things I will add here is this intersection has something that's called a leading pedestrian interval, also known as an LPI, which essentially makes it so that when the light sequence is turning, the pedestrian walk signal actually turns on several seconds before motorists get the green light. So that gives pedestrians a chance to get into the crosswalk and become visible before the motorists, the cars, get that green light and start to go. One thing that we have requested to the city as part of this process of working with them on identifying solutions and signage and changes is that leading interval right now is only, I believe, 3 seconds. So pedestrians essentially only get 3 seconds of walking time before cars get their green light. We're working with the city to see if it would be possible to extend that to maybe 6 or 7 seconds, just to give people more time. Maybe they could get closer to the middle of the crosswalk before motorists are actually starting to go. So that's certainly something we're looking into that I think would help. But again, the city is sort of right now investigating the sequence of the signals and seeing whether they could possibly fit that in. The other thing that I would just add is that right now there is an ongoing study that's looking at the Euclid corridor all the way from East 105th Street on the western limits to the Stokes Windermere Station and East Cleveland, where they are looking at making improvements to the entire corridor for pedestrians, bicyclists, public transit riders. And I think that's really the appropriate platform for looking at not just changes to the signal timing here, but across the entire corridor. The tough thing is that, all of these intersections, the signals don't have their own timing sequences. They speak to each other. So you make changes to one, and then you're possibly to the detriment of others, making it worse. And so you really have to try to find a good balance of, sequence of timing and signals that works for all of these intersections that are speaking to each other. But I believe that's something that's being looked into as part of that Euclid corridor plan as well. All right, I see a hand raised from Jeffrey.
Hey, Cameron. Yeah. I was also just gonna say that the turning angle on both of those, the right turn and the left turn, are very wide.
Yes.
And unless I'm incorrect, that stop bar is about 14 feet wide, which is 2 feet wider than a highway lane and 4 feet wider than any vehicle that's using it needs. At least 4 feet wider than. So I think if the city allows it, between the stop bar and the crosswalk, there could be, or even behind the stop bar, there could be some street paint and maybe a couple of plastic delineators that might force a vehicle to a wider turn and therefore make pedestrians crossing more visible. And in terms of a left-hand turn, the on Euclid, the westbound the leftmost westbound lane is a left-hand turn only lane. And so actually, almost in the intersection, adjacent to the crosswalk, you could have some more delineators to harden that intersection and also make that turn be a little bit tighter for cars, making the pedestrians a little bit more visible and slowing that turn. Again, if the city allows that, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't work. And the traffic engineers of the city might have to noodle it a bit, but I don't think they would object necessarily. They might object only to the maintenance once those any plastic delineators there probably get hit, and they probably wouldn't want to maintain them. But if you guys have any available funding to do that, it shouldn't be too expensive, and that might actually be really beneficial.
Yeah, those are great points. And I think delineators are a way to kind of get a quick win and do something short term, while more long-term solutions are figured out. We certainly see that situation for a lot of the intersections of Euclid Avenue where these, the curb radius for the turns is very wide. And so vehicles are able to make those turns at high speeds. And, as you mentioned, you're able to see a pedestrian better when you're going slower and making a more sharp turn. So yeah, I think there's a lot of situations to possibly do something like that. Any other questions, particularly for this? If not, I'm going to move into another area that we've been focusing on, which is Martin Luther King Junior Drive. Specifically, oh, Rebecca, are you trying to speak? I'm not sure. I'm going to lay your hand. If you are trying to speak, try to raise it again. But there it is. Okay, are you able to unmute yourself, Rebecca? Let's see. Oh, I did get a direct chat from Rebecca. What she asked was, will drivers know what yield means? She doesn't think that drivers will think the yield to pedestrians with that particular language. This is a tough one. So the City of Cleveland Traffic and Engineering Department will only agree to install signage that is available within a certain document called the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD. These are essentially signs that have been vetted by a variety of organizations and traffic engineering to presumably ensure that people understand what they mean without, while also being legible, and quick in terms of like the amount of words that are used. And so in terms of the best signage that's available within that document for informing people of yielding to pedestrians, this is essentially the option that is available to us. So this is what was recommended to us by Cleveland's traffic engineers. It's very hard, or there's not a lot of willingness to deviate from this, I should say. I'm presuming that maybe that has to do with issues of liability or going with something that isn't recommended in an official document. What I will say is, this is something we can start with. But once we have these things out there, we're not just going to call it a day and stop looking at this intersection. We'll make these changes. We'll continue to observe, see if there's an improvement. And if there's not, we're going to keep working on it. We're going to keep chiseling away and seeing what else we can do to improve safety at this intersection. So, similar to the stop bar that we got implemented last year, that was the first step. This is the second step. There might be a third or fourth. We'll continue to observe and make improvements as necessary. Okay, so the next area I want to talk about really quick is MLK Junior Drive. particularly the section between Chester Avenue to the south and then East 105th Street. So this is a section of MLK that goes by Wade Lagoon, the Chinese Cultural Gardens, and through the Nord Family Greenway, just to kind of give some context. And this is an area of MLK that we have heard a lot of complaints about over the past couple of years. Both complaints about perceived speeding, and then also complaints about motorists not yielding to pedestrians that are trying to cross. So if you're familiar with this area at all, there are two crosswalks close to the North Family Greenway, kind of in this area that I'm circling right here, that are highly utilized by pedestrians in this area. The city of Cleveland just recently installed new overhead pedestrian signals there, both to improve visibility of these as well as make something that's a little stronger due to issues with previous versions of pedestrian signals being struck by vehicles over the years. And we have heard some mixed results about those. We have heard positive feedback. People have said that they're an improvement, that motorists are stopping for them now, but then we're also hearing the opposite, that they are still an improvement, but it hasn't fully taken away the issue. There's still a lot of cars that are going by that aren't yielding to pedestrians. And beyond that, as I kind of referred to, this is a stretch of MLK where we have seen a lot of motorists going off the road and striking street poles, pedestrian signals, trees, and other inanimate objects. And fortunately to this date, it has just been inanimate objects, but we really want to be proactive and trying to figure this out before that eventually becomes a person. So this is really an area that's a big concern for us. Yes, Arnold, go ahead.
Yeah, this is another one that I cross all the time. Yes, there's been a small improvement, but people are still racing. There's an essential problem here. Between 105th Street and where it connects into Chester Avenue is a lot of blind curves, and people are trying to race to beat the next light. And until one of those two lights becomes a real red light, this is going to continue to be a problem. That's the only way to fix this, is to stop making it a raceway. You can put police cars there, you can stop people, you can do a whole lot of things, but some people slow down very nicely. Other people, I've had people go around a stopped car and practically hit me. Thank God there hasn't been an accident yet, but that's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for that. Jeffrey?
Yeah. For what it's worth, the city has already heard this from multiple people, but essentially between Chester and Jephthah, that stretch of roadway serves no purpose. There's no access that via car to any buildings, to any facilities, to anything. 105th is already wide enough for all the capacity if people just went that route to Chester instead of Martin Luther King. And Arnold is entirely right. It's a raceway. It's way too wide. Nothing is reinforced. When their cars aren't parked on the side, it looks like a freeway. So there's no design reason that anyone would slow down. And it really, to be honest, ruins the Nord Family Greenway. There's really no reason it can't be closed other than we'd have to, or y'all or whomever would have to go through the process of requesting that and doing it. That said, all of the crosswalks in there could be raised crosswalks. That would slow traffic. Where there is parking, it could actually have curb bump outs that protected that parking and made those firm barriers. But really, there's no capacity reason for that to be an automotive drive. It could be a bikes and pedestrians only type thing. It's all duplicative and it's just dangerous, and there's really no reason for it to exist. And yeah, I agree with Arnold. Unless there's something there that's really firm, and even if there were red lights, I have a feeling it would be race to the next red light kind of behavior. So it could be a pretty pretty low hanging fruit for the cities. If when and if they expand the project that has speed tables and that kind of thing, it could be a really that could benefit from that. And in the long term, I could see there being just removable bollards at both Chester and Jephthah, and only having it open for when some kind of access is needed by specialized or event-based trucks or Kurtz vehicles or something like that. Because as a transportation corridor, there's really no purpose for that to have cars on it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting proposal, especially if the North Family Greenway being there, the Harrison Dillard Bikeway goes right through there as well. So potentially a lot of opportunity if that were to be considered.
Can I just say here, great ideas.
Yes. So here's just some photos showing examples of the motorists going off road and striking street poles and stuff. Both of these occurred in April of this year. So this streetlight pole is right at the crossing of the North Family Greenway, and then this one was up close to the Museum of Natural History. So just kind of showing some examples of the issues that we're currently facing here and experiencing. So this is another situation where we're having conversations with the city, seeing what might be possible. This one we're kind of at a very preliminary stage. The first thing that the city has requested to do was they really just want to collect some data and have a better understanding of existing conditions. So there are currently speed boxes out for both directions of traffic, both northbound and southbound on MLK. If you've been over here, you've probably seen them out. They've been out for about 4 or 5 weeks or so far. They should be out for maybe another week or two, and then the city's going to collect them and download the data from the speed boxes. But essentially, this will help tell us not only how many vehicles are utilizing the stretch of road between East 105th and Chester, but also help us hone in on, is speeding the issue? And is it the only issue? So this is really a start for just like data collection, understand what's happening, establishing a baseline. But then once we have that data, the city is going to share it with us, and then we're going to have additional conversations with them. We have talked about some things related to traffic calming, which Jeffrey kind of referred to, speed tables, things like that. So those are certainly things that we might bring up more as we kind of have a better sense of what is actually going on. So sort of a work in progress right now, still having conversations. What I hope to do is our 4th pedestrian safety meeting of this year for 2023 will be at the beginning of December. Hopefully by then we will not only have the data from these speed boxes to share, but hopefully some solutions that are pretty far along that we can provide an update to this group as well. So more to come on this. And then the last target area that I wanted to talk about is this crosswalk at the intersection of Cornell Road and Random Road. For context, again, we are looking at Cornell Road right now, sort of towards Murray Hill and Edge Hill. And then this road just to the left is Random Road. So right behind us is the bridge that you go over to go through University Hospital campus, essentially. So this crosswalk right here is one that we have heard a lot of concerns about, both from prior pedestrian safety meetings as well as at prior Little Italy Block Club meetings. A lot of concerns of motorists not yielding to pedestrians, as well as concerns about the visibility of this crosswalk. So we started to hear these concerns earlier this year, and similar to what the city's doing at MLK right now, decided to collect some data to have a better sense of what's going on here, what's the problem and what solutions can we think of. So UCPD set up a speed box in both directions of traffic in order to both get traffic counts and speed data, which I have sort of summarized here. So westbound traffic toward Euclid Avenue, we were seeing about 2,500 cars per day with an average speed of 19.9 miles per hour. and then eastbound traffic toward Murray Hill and then going up Edge Hill, seeing a little bit less, 1,800 cars per day and an average speed of 19.7 miles per hour. So, this data right here showed us, there's quite a bit of vehicle traffic, but speeding isn't necessarily the issue. We're seeing, the majority of drivers are going actually under the speed limit here. But another thing that we started to do was we held a variety of observation sessions at the crosswalk where we sat around for an hour or so and just observed pedestrians trying to use these crosswalks and how often a motorist yielded or did not yield to pedestrians. So I sort of have the data here, but I'll walk through it a bit. So essentially what we were looking for with these observation sessions was any situation when there was what we're calling an encounter. So an encounter would be a situation when a pedestrian is trying to cross and there's a vehicle approaching that crossing at the same time. And through all the observation sessions that we did, these were admittedly done in June over the summer, so they're probably quite a bit lower than you would see right now with students on campus. But we saw a total of 32 of those encounters. And out of the 32 encounters, the vehicle approaching the crosswalk only yielded to the pedestrian 6 of the 32 times. Quite low. So we're essentially seeing a yield percent of 19% and a no yield percentage rate of 81%. Not good for this crosswalk. It's rare that you ever see a crosswalk meet that 100%, but not even being anywhere close, being at 90% is certainly something that we could improve upon, I think. So, having the speed and traffic count data, we know that speed isn't really the issue here, which makes us know that, it's more of a visibility issue. Both visibility of the crosswalk and visibility of the pedestrian, and then also to some extent a compliance issue as well. Maybe these drivers are going right by the crosswalk, know what they're doing, and they're just not stopping. And so what we are currently working with the city to do as a first step is the city is investigating replacing the existing pedestrian crossing signs that you can see here with a flashing version that will provide more illumination and awareness that this crossing is here. And there's also sort of a precedent for this on Cornell Road. If you think about going through Cornell, through the University Hospital campus, a lot of those crosswalks already have these types of flashing pedestrian signs to help call them out. So this is really just continuing that trend further down the stretch. And so right now the city has confirmed that the poles here that these signs are connected to already have the power that's needed to power these flashing pedestrian signs. They're just working out some additional details related to the electrical hookup and placement. And so this is, again, something that we're hoping that we can see later this fall once they get those additional details figured out. And like sort of what I said for East 115th, this might be a multi-layered approach. The city will install these. We'll go back. We'll do additional observation sessions, see if that 19% has gone up and to what extent, and then we can, further look at this and look at additional improvements if necessary. But this is sort of a next step in terms of what we can do to just make this crosswalk more visible for pedestrians. And then I have a few quick updates before we get into Q&A. Most of you are probably familiar with these decals that exist throughout the Uptown District. They're the Walk Your Wheels decals that we installed about 3 years ago. First, I will say that we are certainly advocates for people riding bikes, scooters, and other forms of wheeled, micro-mobility devices. But we also recognize that they can be a hazard in high pedestrian areas. And so we installed these decals throughout the Uptown District in the summer of 2020, just to encourage people to hop off their device and walk through Uptown when there's a lot of pedestrian traffic around. Since then, it's been 3 years, and so quite a few of those decals are in not so great shape, as you can see of the photo to the right. So we are in the process of replacing those. Hopefully should have the new ones out in the district within the next couple of weeks. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that. And wanted to share that the Edge Hill bike lane is back. over the past 6 months or so, the striping for the bike lane on Edge Hill had essentially faded and deteriorated and essentially wasn't there at all. And so we have been advocating hard to the city of Cleveland to get that restriped for quite a few months. And finally, last Thursday, the city went out and did the striping work. And I will just say personally, as a bike commuter that rides up Edge Hill almost every single day, I am very thankful to have these back. And now the thing that we're working on is, if you're familiar with the bike lane on Edge Hill at all, it's right next to a lot of foliage, trees, and shrubs. A lot of that it has overtaken the bike lane, and so now we're trying to get the city to go back out and trim that up and actually make the bike lane more accessible. Because right now you have to dodge around it and go into the lane of traffic at certain points to get around it. So happy the lane's back, but there's still certainly some work that needs to be done. Okay, before we get into Q&A, I have a really quick poll that I wanted to do with everyone, just to better understand who you guys are, your stance on pedestrian safety. So give me 1 second, and I'm going to pull this up. And you should be seeing it pop up on your screen right now to answer. There are 6 questions total. And if you don't see it, please let me know.
Once again, to clarify, when you use the word pedestrian, you mean pedestrian or bicyclist, right?
Yes.
That's how I have understood pedestrian to mean. Yes, thank you. Yes, Arnold, go ahead.
Yeah, just a few quick observations. 100 there on 105th Street, there are a few problems. One, the section between, let's say, Park Lane, particularly where across from Maltz going down towards the VA, that section up through Chester, I don't know why they partially repaved the road and then stopped there and has never repaved it, but it's like driving on a washboard right now. It's in horrible condition. It's only going to get worse each winter. And I don't know when they're planning to repave it, but it really needs to be repaved. There's also a section of the sidewalk that has all this debris on it. So if you were trying to stay off of Chester and not get hit on your bike, it's not only that there's a lot of debris, but the sidewalk is all broken up. This is on the side of the street where the if you were driving or riding from Park Lane to VA, it'd be on your right hand side. It's not on the mall side, it's across the street. And the third one, which is partially related, but now that there's a supermarket going in, I noticed one of your reports for one of the red circles earlier was at Carnegie 105th. There's a supermarket that's going to be opening up there soon. and I'm sure it's going to increase pedestrian traffic. And I don't know what plans there are to ensure pedestrian traffic up there, but that's someplace else you might want to take a look at before there are problems rather than waiting to see what problems are going to emerge.
I think that's a really good point. I think there'd be a big benefit for us to go out there proactively and look at that site and think about what type of improvements we can make before, like you said, something happens. So great idea there. Regarding the section of East 105th between Park Lane and sort of like Mount Sinai Drive, we did just recently get the list of planned resurfacing projects from the city of Cleveland within our district about a week and a half ago. And that section of road was on that list. It might not happen this year. We have been told just due to the amount of roads they have to do, some of them might not happen until next spring or summer. So by next summer at the latest, that stretch of road, will be resurfaced. Unfortunately, they don't give us an exact time frame most of the time. And just to kind of share the other roadways that were on that list of everybody, I'm sure most of you know that Adelbert Road is being resurfaced right now. They also had Ansel Road on that list, which is also East 101st. So sort of the north-south road just west of East 105th. And then they also had Circle Drive between Mayfield and Cornell. So those are also upcoming resurfacing projects.
Can I ask? I don't know how they decide their priorities, but there's hardly any traffic on 101st Street. I walk around here all the time. There's hardly any traffic on 101st Street. That they made a priority, but 105th, which is the opportunity corridor now, that got bumped. I'm sorry, but the logic of some of the decisions that they make, plus I never cease to be amazed that they can repave a road here and 2 weeks later they're digging it up because it was like, oh, we forgot to put something else in here, and then immediately create a new pothole opportunity. So that's another thing that they really need to take a look at. If they're going to repave a road, if there's going to be any undersurface work that needs to be done, can they look at it before they repave it rather than after?
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir here. I'll tell you that. It's resurfacing from the city of Cleveland can be a kind of confusing topic just because there are a variety of buckets of funding that go towards certain types of roadways. So my understanding is East 101st has a different bucket of funding than say 105th or Adelbert because it's seen as a residential road. That doesn't excuse the fact that there should be a better job to prioritize, but just kind of explaining sort of the reasoning behind that. I will say that we did advocate for East 105th, Adelbert, and Circle, which I like to think to some extent is why it was on their radar. And we do work with a lot of the institutions throughout the district in order to come up with what our priorities are to advocate to the city. What we advocate for doesn't always happen, but it's at least a push to try to, get them to, do the roadways that need it the most.
Thanks.
Of course. Jeffrey, did you have a comment related to that?
Yeah, I share Arnold's frustration. However, at the same time, I was just going to say the same thing. The 105th, the kind of half bizarre choice on 105th, for better or worse, is actually by Park Lane, is actually to avoid that. There's some water department work that has to happen underneath the road or underneath or adjacent to the road, and that's actually why some of that is on pause, so they don't have to do 2 rounds of it. I'm actually impressed that that's happening because I see the same observation that often we just repaved this and now we're digging it up to do sewer work or something else. But that actually is why that's happening. And then generally, there are many different buckets, including state and federal funding that sometimes do things, but I don't have an opinion on whether it's a good thing or bad thing, but a few years ago, the city went from equally allocating funding across its wards to going from a worst first when they do repaving. So some of those like 101st, when they get really bad is when they'll get repaved. And then in terms of for what it's worth, and this maybe is for Cameron and amongst these calls, and there's no rush for this, but there will be Wade Park Avenue from East 65th to East 118th is probably on that list. And that will be a major reconstruction, and that will come in front of the city's Transportation Infrastructure Advisory Committee. I'm on that. I'm city council's appointment to that committee. So it might actually be useful, Cameron, for you and me, or maybe someone else within the city, to collect thoughts or do a walk audit or some such when that does come up with any interested parties on this group or within the UCI community, because we can basically tell the city what, when they do reconstruction, major reconstruction projects like that, it's when everything comes up. And so we can basically tell the city what is wanted by the community to calm traffic, to have public safety. You know, Kurt, you may want to give your 2 cents on that, because those are the bigger projects that really offer the opportunity for any of the full measures that are wanted. You know, depending on funding, the level of bells and whistles is under question, but it's really the moment where instead of kind of being relegated to half steps, or kind of like, while we're waiting for the next thing, that is the next thing. And so that'll be within the next, I don't know, a year or two, I'd imagine, year or 18 months, I would think, based on the list I'm looking at. So FYI.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I believe the construction, the actual resurfacing is slated for, I believe, like fiscal year 2027. But of course, all of the initial engineering and design work will happen prior to that. So yeah, certainly something that's on our radar right now, and that we want to start having early conversations to make sure that we're thinking about traffic calming, multimodal infrastructure, things like that. And I do see, just looking at the results of the poll here, that there is some interest in a walk audit. So I think that could be a great future opportunity, to just kind of walk down Wade Park Avenue and think about dreams and wishes. I do know from the data that UCPD has that speed is a staggering issue on Wade Park. And it's technically a 2-lane roadway if you think about the section of Wade Park just north of University Circle, but everyone treats it like a 4-lane road. So it's very easy for people to just feel like it's a highway and speed, but then there's also just a lot of opportunity there as well. That's the way I see it. So yeah, certainly want to have those conversations.
Yeah, it's a horrible design right now.
Yes. Great. Well, just kind of scrolling through these answers really quick. Looks like we have a good mix of people that either live, work, or visit in University Circle. Lots of people walking. Makes sense that you're at a meeting for pedestrian safety. In terms of people saying on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not safe and 5 being very safe, how safe do you feel is the pedestrian University Circle? We're seeing most people within 4 or 3. So on the more somewhat safe or safe side. But then we did get 1 person saying that they don't feel safe, and 3 people saying they answered 2, which also kind of feels for the most part not safe. For the most part not safe. Question number 4 was asking, in your experience, which of these things most enables you to walk safely in University Circle? Decent amount of people said that sidewalks are generally in good condition and accessible. People like the fact that there's other people around, so they don't feel isolated. And then some people saying that streetlights are functional. Yes, Patricia.
Thanks for this presentation and for this information and the transparency that you bring into this effort. It's really, really appreciated. I didn't see a question about this in the survey, and it's a little unique, and I was a little late getting on, so maybe you addressed something about it at the beginning, but I didn't hear it. And that's about the two railroad bridges that we have to walk under in University Circle. One goes out to where UCI's police office is. That is the one on 118th. And the other one is on Mayfield as you go into Little Italy.
Yep.
And both of them are horrendous. And they're a couple of the places I feel unsafe.
Yeah, that's good to know. I will admit that I don't have an exact answer for you. I will say that particularly the bridge on Euclid Avenue is something that we see as a priority. It's something that we have heard a lot of complaints about related to safety. And I completely agree with you. When you're going under there, like no matter what time of day, it feels very dark. There's always water and sludge and so forth. It's just not a very welcoming environment. And I would also
Sludge is a
say,
great word for it. Sludge.
yeah. But I would say, it's not only a really challenging physical barrier between University Circle and sort of the gateway into East Cleveland, but it's also just a very, like it's a mental barrier as well. And it's, something that we really want to tackle, whether it's getting it cleaned up, trying to get more lighting underneath, but also thinking about like placemaking and public art and trying to liven the space and make it feel like, an environment that you feel comfortable and want to walk under. With that said, we've had a lot of conversations about wanting to do that. Working with the railroad companies is very, very challenging. We've had some success, limited success in getting them to come out and do some very seriously needed repairs, but conversations related to installing lighting and stuff have only gotten so far. I do know that there is an initiative underway with the city of Cleveland right now to try to hold these railroad companies more accountable and get things to happen. And we were involved in that process as well and sent a lot of information related to all of the railroad bridges within University Circle. There's 4 of them total. So Euclid, Mayfield, there's one at MLK as you approach Cedar. And then there's another one that I'm blanking on right now. The one that's on Cedar at the Cedar Rapid Station. All 4 of those to some extent have work that needs to be done or could at the very least be lit up better. And so there's an initiative underway with the city right now to try to hold railroad companies accountable. It's just a really challenging process. But yeah, the more we hear from people that, this is a concern, it's helpful to hear that so we can, push that along to both the city and the railroad companies that we're hearing this from people.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, lots of people want to go to the cemetery and walk and visit and whatnot. It's you have to walk by there or bike by or whatever. But I just wonder whether, and I've heard this, I also heard this, of course, when they were doing it on Mayfield and trying to navigate something with regard to that RTA station improvement and all.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, why can't we just do it anyway? Why don't we just string our own lights underneath the bridge, put our own posts up? I mean, put our own like water drains and something that will kind of come in and kind of wash it away or run down the drain or whatever it is. I mean, not even attach it to their cement, like do our own thing. You're possibly never going to win.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, that's essentially what Case Western did for the bridge at Cedar Road. If you've ever been over there, the lighting there is not installed directly onto the bridge. They created their own little walkway essentially to install lighting underneath it because they weren't able to work with the railroad companies to get lighting installed into the bridge. So that is an option if necessary. But I will just say, most of you probably know that UCI has a fairly new president on board, Kate Borders. She's been with us for about 3 months. And she has really talked a lot about the Euclid Avenue bridge in particular and seeing that as a priority for her. So I'm hoping that we can work towards a solution there.
I don't know what if for at least for the Cedar and Mayfield ones, I don't know what I don't know how you're gonna say this ownership privilege. I don't know where RTA exactly fits into that or whether I say we because I'm on the board, just kind of depend on the railway to do it. But in terms of lobbying or advocacy or whatever, I'll do what I can. And then from folks, if they want to send in feedback to RTA too, because RTA can always, even if it is the roadway, if they're repeating the same message that that the city hears and that Cameron hears. It's just kind of taking it from more angles. And if I can repeat things from the board level, and we're also hearing from folks who are traversing those bridges, because I agree, I hate them all. Especially the one over Euclid is just dangerous, like in every sense. We can hopefully kind of move the dial on those, and or figure out to kind of take Patricia's route and do it ourselves in some kind of fashion, like get the city and RTA on board to do that if the railways don't respond.
Yeah. Rebecca, if you're not able to speak still, feel free to use the chat again. Or let me see, she may have already sent it to me. Here we go. I'll read it out loud. So she said, we should also try to elevate those crosswalks or give them some protected time to cross. I've seen cars blow through the left from Mayfield onto Euclid in the evenings, completely not seeing height disadvantaged pedestrians, particularly chair users. So this is for the crossings on Euclid. Is that what you're referring to? But yeah, I will say I do like the idea of exploring raised crosswalks in some areas around a district. Essentially functions similar to like a speed bump or a speed table, but you're doing it at the exact location where someone's crossing. I could think of a few locations, right off the top of my head where that could be a benefit, especially within like areas of Case's campus. Yeah, Adelbert jumps to mind. Absolutely. All right. Going
Do you
through
have
the
any
chat.
idea if that's part of the repaving plan that's happening presently?
I don't believe so. I don't believe they're planning to do essentially anything different from what the existing conditions that there already were on Adelbert Road.
I will say that the pedestrian crosswalk on Adelbert, we're noticing how well that works in the middle of the road there by Adelbert Hall, because it's not set up right now. They're repaving, but both the street markings and the little flexible sign in the middle that says drivers must stop state law, that did a lot to stop cars when it was there. And I knew that when it was there, but I really know that now because it's gone while they're repaving. So if that's a model that works in other places where it's not at an intersection, maybe take a look at that. That might work maybe on MLK,
right.
Maybe the space you're talking about on Cornell across from the old Club Isabella, where it's not a full turn.
Yeah, and I mean, I drive down to Delbert and it does make it feel tighter, and it automatically slows you down, and it catches your attention for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. Okay, does anyone have any other questions for us? Either, something, related to what we shared or just areas that you have concerns about? I'm happy to take those and we can do some investigating, and then, Sergeant Keeper's here as well if you have any UCPD related questions also.
Just keep posting about where Grace is. I keep missing her, but eventually I will get to the right event so I can pet her.
Will do.
Yes, Grace is fantastic. We're all fans of her. Well, great. If there's no other questions, just want to kind of close out really quick, let all of you know when our next meeting is going to be. So let me see if I can successfully get this up this time. All right. Can everyone see this? Give me a thumbs up. Perfect. All right. Well, so thank you, everybody. Our next pedestrian safety meeting, we do these quarterly, as I mentioned before. So the next one is going to be Wednesday, December 6th. Same time, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m., also over Zoom. You can register for that meeting by going to our Project Yield website. So universitycircle.org/Project Yield. The registration link for that meeting should already be up. So feel free to go do that whenever you want. We also, promote this through our newsletters and social media. So even if you don't sign up right now, I'm sure a lot of you will just see it through the social media channels. And then here is our contact information. If you'd like to reach out to us, feel free to take a picture, write it down. Always happy to chat about pedestrian safety in University Circle. And, willing to kind of do what we shared at this meeting. When we hear concerns, we try to investigate, collect data, and understand what the issues actually are, get down to the root of the problem, and, think about improvements. So always happy to look into areas of concern that you might have. The last thing I'll just say is we do record all of these meetings and post them on our Project Yield website. So the recording for this meeting should be up within the next day or two. So if you know anybody, friends, family, employees who might benefit from listening to this conversation, feel free to send the recording along to them so they can watch it as well. That's all I got. Thank you so much for attending. Hope you all have a good evening.